Hi friends, welcome to the Wild Side. I'm Steve Hall. The roots of Tennessee history are often buried deep in fertile soil. If only trees could talk, what a story they would tell. Some of Tennessee's most famous trees have stood witness over the sweeping winds of change across our state in times of trouble and times of tranquility. And that's why the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council created a registry to document and preserve plantings such as the ones at President Andrew Johnson's old homestead up in Greenville. The wispy leaves of these willows intertwine with the lives of three military leaders who are, to this day, connected by the branches that brought them together.
The willow trees actually were a gift to a young Johnson from a Civil War soldier who had worked for him. He was an explorer. His name was Captain Lynch. Many know and many don't know, Johnson was a brigadier general during the Civil War. Captain Lynch traveled all over the world, and he actually went through to the islands of St. Helena, and he actually went to Napoleon's grave. In doing that, he took a small sapling and cut it off from the willows there, protected it, kept it watered, brought it back, and would present it to Johnson.
You can in fact break a branch off of a willow tree, and in the right conditions, you can get that branch to resprout into root system and become the same tree as the one you broke it off from.
Since willow trees grow strongest near a natural water source, Andrew Johnson chose to plant his new sapling from the French Emperor's grave near the old gum spring flowing through the backyard of his homestead. It was here that he and his impoverished family had spent their very first night in Greenville, Tennessee, after walking over 300 miles from Raleigh, North Carolina.
So those willow trees are their witness trees. They've been here since it became the homestead, since Johnson lived here, the plight of the Civil War, all the changes that have happened in Greenville since then. So the willows are really a major part of this story because it doesn't just remind us of a small historic site in the United States, it reminds us that we're part of a bigger picture of the world. And a National Historic Site, part of our responsibility is really to remind the public of where we came from as a nation, and that's what historic sites do. They tell our stories. And this is one of the most unique stories. Johnson was a unique gentleman who would later on become the 17th President of the United States.
The little sapling also prospered, and several willow trees drew their life's water from the homestead spring. Willows are among the fastest growing plants in the world, reaching heights of 35 to 50 feet. But they often have short lifespans, which is why great care is always taken to preserve these particular living legacies.
We've actually taken saplings, and we actually have a nursery that protects National Park Service trees up in Vermont. So we actually have one growing up there. So in case anything ever happens here, or all the disease comes and kills everything here, that we will still have a sapling.
One of the larger willows was toppled by high winds several years ago, but a National Park System botanist maintains scientific proof that those still growing on the homestead property in Greenville are direct descendants of the mother tree.
Willow is a pretty easy tree to preserve through branch structure, through wood tissue. And they were able to document that these trees were preserved from the original one. And so in fact, we're looking at the same DNA of the tree that stood at the graveside of Napoleon.
It's easy to get caught up in where we're going and forget where we've been. There's no way to know how many people drive by here every day with no idea that a piece of history lives right here on the side of this busy city street.
One of the responsibilities of the National Park Service and one of our challenges is really to preserve and protect special places, both historic sites and natural sites for future generations. Here at the homestead, the willows help us do that. The willows put it in perspective of the whole lifetime of young American history from the time really that we were a young country till our age today. If you come back in 100 years, because the willows have been preserved, you'll actually be able to see the same view shed and the same historical perspective that Johnson saw.
An emperor who would eventually be exiled and die on the island with his beloved weeping willow. A Navy captain who felt called to take a cutting from that tree to give as a gift. And a poor young boy who grew up to be President of the United States, all connected over 150 years ago by a tree that, to this day, is alive and well.
These trees are living documents of the history of this state captured through the wood tissue, the leaves, the roots, and the structures. And that's why the Landmark and Historic Tree Registry that the council, the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council does, is such a living monument to the culture and the heritage of this state.
You can explore our website, wildsidetv.com, to learn more about Tennessee's historic trees. The Tennessee Urban Forestry Council has published a picture book about them. Now, over the years, President Johnson's willow cuttings have been shared with people in all kinds of places around the world. In 2000, cuttings were actually shipped back to St. Helena Island, where the tree at Napoleon's grave had died. We're told the cuttings were wrapped in a copy of the Greenville Sun newspaper and soaked in water from the spring on the homestead property.